In this movie, the killer follows two main rules. First, you should not feel sympathy, because sympathy is seen as a weakness, and weaknesses can negatively impact our tasks. Therefore, one should never show sympathy. The second rule is to always make quick decisions and stick to your original plan. This rule, along with the first, is mentioned 10 to 12 times throughout the movie, but I'm telling you now because these are principles deeply rooted in the killer's heart and mind. Right now, he's on a task to eliminate a rich man, which means he was hired for this job. He was observing from an old office space, not a rented room across from a big, fancy hotel. So, he quietly broke into this office and set it up as his base. The killer had a very organized routine. He made sure to get 8 hours of sleep every night, wake up early for exercises, including yoga and warming up his hands and feet, and practice with his weapons to keep his shooting skills sharp. Life in this city was affordable. He could get a meal at McDonald's for a few dollars, and that was enough for him. He was also careful to avoid being caught on CCTV or doing anything that might look suspicious. He rarely spoke to anyone and never raised his voice or acted out of line, always focusing on his job. After watching the same hotel room for 3 days, he knew exactly when and where his target would be. Finally, the moment came for him to take the shot. He was fully focused on his target, but just as he was about to fire, a girl who was with the man and was a prostitute got hit by the bullet by mistake. This messed up the whole plan. The police were on their way to search the building, so the killer had to quickly gather his belongings and leave. He grabbed his Vespa scooter, and as he left, he threw away his guns and other weapons at different spots. He also stopped by a laundry shop's bathroom where he washed his hands and feet with warm water, brought his body temperature back to normal, shaved, and changed his clothes. Then, he went straight to the airport. He had already discarded his guns along the way. After that, he called his contractor to say there had been a last-minute mistake and he needed another chance. But the contractor told him there would be no second chances and he would have to face the consequences. The killer didn't dwell on this and headed straight to his home in the Dominican Republic. He owned a Jeep Thar there. Beautiful shots of the city were shown, and his home was in a secluded area, much like a wealthy person's farmhouse, far from public access. Upon arriving, he noticed footprints and cigarette butts outside his house. Normally, no one comes there, but their presence meant something serious had happened. He pulled out his gun and entered the house from the back, discovering it had been thoroughly searched, likely by people looking for him because he had failed his mission. They probably intended to kill him, but then he saw drops of blood and realized his wife had been hurt. He rushed to the local hospital where he found her. His brother-in-law was also there, who explained that the enemies had followed him but ended up attacking his sister because he wasn't there. Thankfully, he had gotten her to the hospital in time. He said if he had arrived a bit earlier, he might have caught the attackers, who had escaped in a green taxi. The attackers were a stocky boy and a girl with white hair. After this, the killer visits his wife, who says to him, "You would be proud of me because I didn't reveal anything about you." She looked quite hurt, especially on her face, but reassured him, "I'll get better soon." Seeing his wife's injuries, the killer becomes furious and decides to make those responsible pay for their actions. He then goes home, where he digs up several guns, fake passports, different currencies, and keys to various safe houses. He sets a plan in motion and starts by tracking down all the green taxi services in the city. He finds a dealer, breaks into his house, and checks his computer to find out which taxi left the airport around 4 or 5 p.m. the previous day. He discovers that a man named Leo was the driver. The next morning, the killer finds Leo and asks for a ride further out of town. Once they reach a remote area, he pulls out his gun and demands Leo to tell him who he picked up from the airport 2 days ago. Terrified, Leo confesses that there were 2 passengers, a stocky man and a very thin girl with white hair, who looked almost like a toothpick. They were in a rush and provided an address for drop-off, instructing him to wait outside. So, he waited there, smoking a cigarette. When the pair hurried out, their hands were bloody, and they were carrying a gun, so he didn't ask any questions. He dropped them off as instructed and pleads with the killer, "Please let me go. I didn't do anything wrong." The killer thinks that if this guy can spill everything so easily just because a gun is pointed at him, he would surely give away my details under similar pressure. So, he kills him on the way. Again, the killer lives by his rules. Never show sympathy because it's a weakness, and weaknesses can mess up a task. Always make quick decisions and stick to the original plan. After that, he heads to Michigan to meet his contractor where a woman named Dolores had just received a parcel. Pretending to be a janitor, the killer sneaks into the office. He waits for 15 seconds at the gate until the delivery guy leaves, and then he goes inside. Dolores then takes him to her boss, Hodge, who tells him, "You're making a mistake. You shouldn't have come here. You know the rules. I had to pacify a wealthy client, so I had to act. I was worried you might go to his rivals and damage his reputation, which could hurt his business. That's why he contacted me again, and you know we always complete our tasks without flaws. You have a lot of money. If you want, you can start a new life with a fake identity in another country, and I'll pretend this visit and conversation never happened. Take my advice and just walk away." But the killer was furious. He demands the details of the two murderers, but Hodge hesitates to provide them. At that moment, he had a nail gun in his hand and he drove 3 nails into Hodge's chest. Hodge's condition quickly deteriorated. He could barely speak, and suffering from severe blood loss, he soon died. Following this, the killer confronted Dolores and sternly told her, "You are his secretary. You handle all the deals, so you will connect me to those killers, or this will be your last moment." Dolores realized that he was a professional killer bent on revenge, and she was likely to die, so she pleaded, "Even if you have to kill me, please make it look like an accident so my children can receive the insurance money and continue their lives without trouble. If it looks like murder, they won't get anything, and our family will fall apart." Then she led him to her house. As the killer was about to park the car, he stepped out to open the garage door. Meanwhile, Dolores tried to free her hands, but the rope was tied too tightly. By the time the killer returned, he demanded she pull up the details immediately. Now, all the company's sensitive information, including who to take contracts from, who to award them to, the financial inflows and outflows, was on Hodge's laptop, accompanied by small sticky notes and cards that contained further details. The killer needed all this information to track down the 2 murderers. He also took the phone number of the client who had hired the 2 killers. Before leaving, he twisted Dolores's neck and pushed her down the stairs to make her death look like an accident, ensuring her children would receive the insurance money. Afterward, he switched cars, changed the license plate, and then took another car to continue his mission. His next target was the Beast, the man who had severely injured his wife. At the time, the Beast was with a couple of his hefty friends and had a very aggressive pit bull. The killer began his preparations by visiting a shopping mart to buy some food and medicine, and then he waited in his car for the Beast. As evening approached, the scene shifted to the Beast leaving his house to go to a club where he danced and spent lavishly. Upon returning home, he found himself alone as his friends had already left. It was then that the killer made his move, adhering to his 2 rules. Show no sympathy, for sympathy is a weakness, and always make quick decisions without altering the original plan. And now, using the groceries he bought, meat, oil, and other items, the killer prepared some meatballs laced with sleeping pills, which he fed to the dog. Once the dog consumed these drug treats, it quickly became sedated and fell into a deep sleep. With the dog out of the way, the killer stealthily advanced with his gun ready to confront the Beast. However, the Beast sensed an intruder, and the 2 engaged in a fierce battle. The clash was intense, resulting in a chaotic scene with broken tables, shattered glass, and injuries to both men. Despite the Beast's physical advantage, the killer's intense anger fueled him, and he ultimately shot the Beast twice in the head. To erase any trace of his presence, the killer then set the house on fire, destroying all potential evidence. Adopting a new identity as Legrand, he then relocated to another country where he targeted another individual. This next target, a woman, drove to a restaurant in her expensive car. The killer followed and saw an opportunity to shoot her, but chose to observe where she was going. Once she stopped and entered the restaurant, she ordered a lavish meal. Knowing that such a skilled individual would likely be armed, the killer discreetly removed a gun from her bag, preempting any defense she might have planned. Realizing who he was, the killer sent to eliminate her, she resigned herself to her fate. She suggested they enjoy the meal together, as it could be her last day. Savoring what could be her final moments, she invited the killer to execute her after their meal, thus facing her end with a certain poise and acceptance. She treated him to expensive sushi, fine wine, and a variety of lavish dishes, and even took care of the bill. After dining, she mentioned that they were in the center of the city, warning that if he killed her there, he might not escape easily. She suggested he take her somewhere more secluded, admitting she'd made many mistakes in life, and this one might be her downfall. While they talked, she slipped and fell, then reached out her hand to the killer, asking for help to stand up. However, the killer, choosing not to assist her, shot her in the head instead. It was then revealed to the viewers that she had a knife in her other hand, ready to strike him if he had helped her up. Having avenged both killers, the killer's next move was to confront the main client who had initiated everything. He traveled to New York to meet this influential business tycoon. Breaking into the tycoon's well-guarded residence was challenging, so he first acquired a device to duplicate keys. Confronting the client, the killer explained that he understood the client had not directly caused his grievances. The client had only sought to eliminate a rival through Hodge, who had hired the killer without the client's full knowledge. After the initial job failed, the client, advised by Hodge, feared the killer might betray them, so Hodge orchestrated a hit against him. The client, maintaining innocence, stated he had simply followed Hodge's advice and continued funding him, believing it necessary. Acknowledging the real culprit was Hodge, who had already faced his demise. The killer warned the client of the dangers of engaging in such dealings again, and advised him to avoid crossing paths with him in the future. After settling scores, the killer returned home to spend quality time with his wife. Using the remaining funds, he crafted a new identity and began anew, leaving his past behind. Thus, the movie concludes, wrapping up a tale of revenge and redemption. I hope you guys enjoyed this explanation. If you did, please like, comment, share, and subscribe if you're new to the channel, because there's more to come.